The $78 billion diet industry wants you to believe you have to give up bread, ban sugar, or survive on lettuce wraps to lose weight. Mostly because keeping you confused keeps you buying the next miracle solution. But the truth is, I never had lasting success until I did the exact opposite of what every diet guru told me to do. And this is coming from a 40-plus woman who's down 50 pounds. And I got there just by making a few simple diet swaps to the routine that was keeping me stuck. But things weren't always this way, because I'm the same girl who once Googled, "Will Doritos kick you out of ketosis?" Which was long before I finally understood how weight loss actually works. And what finally worked for me had nothing to do with extreme diet rules, and everything to do with these simple swaps that made fat loss feel nearly effortless. So in this video, I'll show you 10 simple diet swaps that helped me lose 50 pounds without starving myself, giving up everything I love, or wasting money on diet food that just ends up in the trash. But before we talk about the first habit, get up right now, grab a glass of water, and drink it. Why? Because 75% of the time you think you're hungry, you're actually just dehydrated. And implementing simple habits like drinking a glass of water instead of just passively watching another fat loss video is what will take you one step closer to effortless fat loss. Speaking of simple habits, if your obsessive diet brain is still convinced that you have to give up everything you love to make progress, you'll never stick with it long enough to get results. Which is the exact way most women go into a new fat loss plan, which works for a few days. At least until you find yourself face first in a Costco-sized bag of chips. Here's the thing, whenever you tell yourself that something's off limits, that only leaves you obsessing over that food. Then one day you open the bag for just a taste, and the next thing you know, you've eaten the entire bag, only realizing it after you're tilting the bag back and frantically shaking into your mouth like it owes you money. I remember sitting at my kitchen table after staying out too late the night before, surrounded by empty bags of chips, crying because I felt so out of control. If that's you right now, I see you, and I promise it is not your fault. This was me every time I restarted keto. I tried so hard to stick to the rules every time I dipped my toe back in. I even remember sneaking pork rinds into the movie theater like some sad, salty contraband, just so I could feel normal while my family plowed through huge buckets of popcorn. Even though I strictly followed my plan with 0 processed carbs for weeks at a time, all I could think about were crunchy snacks. Sure, I tried diet-approved versions to fill the void, but the crunchy cravings never went away. These days, I don't restrict any foods. I just time them smarter, like chips. I won't eat chips early in the day since that always leads to more cravings. But if I save enough calories for dinner, I'll throw together these high-protein beef nachos. That way, I get what I crave while still getting what I need to lose fat. This works because I fill up on real, satisfying food all day. So once it's time to enjoy my favorite snacks, I'm not starving or completely out of control. Of course, none of this works without this next swap. Back when I relied on low-calorie diets, cereal and bagels were morning staples because they're easy to prepare, low in calories, and touted as healthy by government officials, who probably haven't seen the inside of a gym since women bouncing around in the leg warmers was all the rage. And here's what the cereal companies don't want you to know. Those heart-healthy whole grains they push, they are literally designed to make you hungrier, so you'll just eat more, especially when you're only throwing in a small splash of protein in the bowl. Once I ditched breakfast foods that revolved around healthy whole grains and made more protein the star of the morning, that's when everything changed. Because I used to believe bagels were the holy grail of healthy carbs, at least until I realized they kept me full for exactly 17 minutes. But once I began starting my day with 30 grams of protein, my blood sugar was steady, I had more energy, and I cut cravings all day. In fact, within the first week of starting my morning with 30 grams of protein, my afternoon cravings dropped dramatically. Which means I don't end up rage eating peanut butter out of the jar at 10 a.m. while Googling, why can't I lose weight? Most mornings I keep it simple with a protein shake. It's quick, easy, and it fits into my busy mornings. But if you prefer a more traditional breakfast, then try a pizza bagel. You can put this together by toasting a thin sliced bagel. Then top it with cooked egg whites, marinara, your favorite toppings, and cheese. You'll still get your bagel fix, but now it's packed with 31 grams of protein and just 325 calories. And it'll keep you full all morning, which leads right into the next swap. Diets don't work if they make you miserable. If your plan makes you cut out everything you enjoy, it's only a matter of time before you cave. Before figuring this out, I used to build meals around whatever was easy to snack on, which is how I ended up with a lunch that resembled a toddler's birthday party plate. Mostly cheese and crackers, plus a few pieces of fruit that I never even touched, which also doesn't work for weight loss. But instead of tossing everything I craved, I started building meals around protein. I had to start thinking about protein as my meal's trusty BFF that keeps diet drama low. So the chips, the cheese, and maybe even a skinny margarita can join the party without hijacking every ounce of progress I made that week. This one change helped me naturally eat 300 to 400 fewer calories per day without even trying. Take that breakfast bagel as an example. Egg whites and cheese make up your protein base. Then you add a thinner bagel for fewer calories, and boom, you've got a filling meal that you'll actually crave. Same with those beef nachos. Plan your nachos by figuring out how much beef you need to hit your protein goal. 5 ounces of lean beef is a great start. Then figure out how many chips and how much cheese you can add while sticking to your calorie budget. I usually have a hefty 1.5 ounce serving of chips for dinner, but cutting back to an ounce or even half an ounce still gives you the crunch without all of the calories. Same thing with cheese. I usually add an ounce, but if you need to save on calories, stick to only half an ounce or cut it out altogether. If you want to slash even more calories while adding protein, you can swap sour cream for Greek yogurt. Then be sure to add plenty of veggies to bulk it up without adding a ton of calories. Now you've got a high protein meal you love that still fits your fat loss plan. But just because you're increasing protein, that doesn't mean you should plan every meal around protein paired with processed foods. When I first began focusing on protein, I figured if a meal had 30 grams, I was good to go. So I'd start the day with protein pancakes, which had 30 grams of protein in a quick and delicious meal. Then I'd pair lunch with high protein chips because 8 grams of protein makes them healthy, right? By the afternoon, I'd throw in a protein bar to tide me over. But the problem with eating all of these foods marketed as high protein was I still found myself absolutely starving by dinner. And I mean full on licking the inside of the peanut butter jar while making dinner kind of starving, which always led to me completely blowing my calorie budget for the day. That's because processed protein doesn't fill you up the same way whole food protein does. Since your body doesn't have to do much to digest foods made from protein powder, every time you count on it as a meal, your body's like, cool, thanks for the snack dust. And then it clears it in 5 seconds flat, leaving you hungrier than if you ate something like meat that takes longer to digest. Of course, that doesn't mean I don't ever eat the processed stuff, especially since a protein shake is my morning go-to. But I also understand that if I want to stay fuller on less calories, that eating more whole food protein is what I need to do. Which means breakfast might be 4 to 5 ounces of leftover meat paired with breakfast potatoes, or a big scramble made up of a few whole eggs mixed with egg whites to increase protein. And instead of having protein chips with lunch, I swap my side to a big bowl of fruit. Instead of that protein bar, I snack on 4 ounces of rotisserie chicken with an apple, which has the same calories, but helps me stay full for over 3 hours instead of just 30 minutes. Even though fruit isn't packed with protein, it's full of fiber and other nutrients your body needs to feel full. Plus, one time I cracked a tooth on Quavos, and since I am absolutely terrified of the dentist, that level of fear was enough to wean me off the processed crunchy snacks for good. Which leads right into this next simple swap that makes hitting my daily protein target way easier. Back when I was new to a high protein, flexible diet, I always scoured the grocery store for anything with protein on the label. And it's safe to say that I have eaten enough protein bars that I could easily fill up Fort Knox with just the wrappers. But what I didn't know back then is most high protein snacks are still processed junk. They're just junk with a protein upgrade. Even though a high protein snack is way better than something like chips, nothing beats the hunger busting power of real food like meat, Greek yogurt, or even cottage cheese. And being completely honest, If I could eat Greek yogurt with every meal, I would, because I love how creamy it is. Plus, 100 calories of this fills me up way longer than 100 calories of pretty much any other food. But apparently my sinuses hate joy, which means I have to save it for special occasions. Which is why whenever I'm ready for a snack, I measure out a few ounces of leftover meat and base my snack around that. Sometimes I'll just snack on the meat and go about my day, while other days I might heat up a mini meal, like these chicken ranch tostadas, which have 29 grams of protein and only 283 calories. The point is, real food protein that your body has to digest makes it easier to eat less calories without feeling ravenously hungry, which is what needs to happen for a sustainable fat loss plan, which makes this next simple swap an absolute game changer. Even though dinner is my biggest meal, I still found myself overeating until I added this fat loss hack to my routine. I used to save calories all afternoon so I could eat more with dinner, which is a great strategy in theory, but the reality was it led to me binging on anything I could get my hands on while making dinner. And then still going back for seconds. You know that feeling when you're being good all day, then you walk into the kitchen to make dinner and suddenly you're a raccoon going through the garbage? That was me. Standing at the counter eating cold leftover pizza while stirring pasta, wondering why I had zero self-control. Like, why was I eating cold pizza with one hand and stirring pasta with the other? Because really, what was the plan? Eating dinner before dinner and then eating more dinner? But I was starving, so that's what happened. Now I make sure to have a protein-heavy snack between 2 and 4, which gets rid of that ravenous pre-dinner hunger. While whole food protein is always best, that doesn't mean a giant bowl of protein ice cream can't work just as well. Especially since I know I'll be eating real food protein with dinner, which makes spending less than 200 calories on something I enjoy worth it. Plus, it's a high volume snack, which means it takes longer to eat. That gives my brain time to catch up with my stomach, so I'm not raiding the pantry again 10 minutes later. This one habit helps me show up to dinner satisfied instead of inhaling 800 calories before I even sit down. Speaking of calories, if you're not making this next swap, that's like throwing a dart and hoping that it hits the bullseye. Sure, you'll sometimes get lucky, but if your hand-eye coordination is anything like mine, you'll most likely just end up with a lot of holes in your wall. Back when I first learned about tracking macros, counting carbs was all the rage. Calories didn't matter, protein wasn't a priority, and I was told to eat more fat to replace all of the carbs I cut. Sure, it worked for a little while, but every time I slipped up over the holidays, bam, 5 pounds came right back. Every time I left for vacation, that was an automatic 10-pound gain. And once my body had enough of the stress from focusing on all of the wrong things, those 50 pounds I worked so hard to lose piled right back on. Everything changed when I stopped obsessing over carbs and began focusing on the things the diet gurus told me to ignore. That's when the weight finally came off, and this time it actually stayed off. While other fitness influencers are selling you $200 macro coaching, I'm about to give you the only 2 numbers that actually matter for free. Because I get it. Tracking macros sounds complicated, and who wants to log every bite? But honestly, just making sure you're hitting your protein and having a rough idea of your calories is more than enough to see real progress. Yes, carbs and healthy fats matter, but most women get overwhelmed trying to track everything at once. That's why I teach women in my Forever Fat Loss system to start by tracking only calories and protein. My clients in the Forever Fat Loss system are seeing results with just these 2 metrics, like Sarah, who lost 23 pounds tracking only calories and protein, and Maria, who finally broke her 2-year plateau just by tracking what she eats. And once you get that down, that's when you'll start hearing things like, "Girl, you look amazing. What are you doing?" And all you have to say is, "I joined the Forever Fat Loss system and now the fat practically falls off." Okay, shameless plug, but I am customizing macros and throwing in a full year personalized goal tracker for free right now, so I'd say it's worth a 15-second mention. Even if you don't join the system, Stop trying to track all of the things. Fat loss gets a whole lot easier when you focus on just calories and protein, which is often all it takes for real, lasting results. One more thing I teach my clients is something that I didn't figure out until I'd spent over 20 years stuck in the same pattern of losing and regaining the same 20 to 50 pounds. And if that's where you are now, this next swap could be key to finally breaking that cycle. Most of my videos stress the importance of adding more real food protein to your fat loss plan, because if you want sustainable results, that's what has to happen. But that's hard to do when every high protein meal triggers raging heartburn, or you feel like you're giving birth to a poop baby every time you increase protein. Now, I know that's TMI, but if you've ever Googled something like, "Why is my husband in the bathroom 3 times a day, but I can't go more than once a week?" then we're already friends. And no, you're not gross. You are just way overdue for real answers. As someone who struggled with that level of constipation for decades, I know chronic constipation is no laughing matter. But if you think pooping once a week is normal, trust me, it's not. But don't feel bad, because I didn't know that either, at least until someone pointed it out. Because no one really talks about this stuff. But I'm gonna talk about it, because there will be no poop baby trauma on my watch. If you deal with heartburn, constipation, bloating after meals, food sitting in your stomach like a rock, or you see undigested food in your stool, you are dealing with low stomach acid. And relying on over-the-counter cures actually makes things worse. The same goes for adding more whole food protein, because when your stomach can't break it down, all it does is sit there, leaving you bloated, miserable, and further from your goals. So if you're increasing protein for fat loss, but your digestion is a mess, it won't do much besides make you feel worse. But when you take the time to support stomach acid production with a natural supplement like betaine HCl, you can finally eat more protein and actually feel better while doing it. That's because more stomach acid helps your body break down protein into usable nutrients, which means you'll stop feeling like crap after meals and finally poop like a normal person. As someone who's tried every medication for heartburn and constipation for decades, I can tell you that natural supplements work to improve these problems for good. In fact, I haven't had an issue with chronic heartburn in over 10 years. And yes, I finally understand why regular bowel movements are necessary. Since I've still got 2 more diet swaps to get into, I'll stop talking poop and drop the link to learn more about how you can improve stomach acid in the description. If you struggle with any of these symptoms, this is life-changing information, so don't skip it. But what you should skip is that big glass of OJ you drink every morning at breakfast. Back when I began my journey to lose 100 pounds, I remember getting into an argument with my husband, who was also trying to slim down. We were at our favorite breakfast spot. I ordered an omelet with bacon plus a side of pancakes, but I only planned to have a few bites since I was following low carb. He did the same, except he started his meal with a big glass of freshly squeezed orange juice. Ever the diet know-it-all, I told him the OJ was sabotaging his progress. He disagreed because orange juice is healthy, right? But here's the thing. Just because something is made from whole foods, that doesn't make it optimal for fat loss. And any calories that come in liquid form are definitely not optimal, with the exception to maybe a nutrient-dense protein shake. If you want to make fat loss easier, cutting out liquid calories is one of the first and most impactful things you can do. That's because liquid calories in any form are an easy way to take in way more calories than you realize. Plus, they're the fastest way to spike and crash your blood sugar, leaving you even hungrier. So if you're still starting your day with juice or sipping calories throughout the day, it is stalling your progress. Even the little things like flavored coffee creamer can add up to hundreds of hidden calories. And if you've been ordering your favorite Starbucks drink without checking the calorie count, take a peek at their nutrition menu. You just might find the reason that you're not losing weight, especially since eliminating liquid calories can lead to major results. In fact, some people have lost 50 pounds or more just by cutting out juice, soda and calorie-packed coffee drinks. And since meals out are one of the worst offenders when it comes to high-calorie drinks, I'd be remiss if I didn't end with this final simple swap, especially considering Americans spend 58.5% of their food budget on meals out. And between restaurant outings, holidays, and buffet tables, it's easy to feel like your fat loss goals don't stand a chance. But instead of avoiding these situations or going and starving and just hoping for the best, I make one simple move. I eat a high protein snack before I go. And no, it doesn't ruin the meal, but it does ruin the urge to wrestle my kid over the last dinner roll like it was the last piece of bread on earth and I hadn't eaten in days. A few ounces of chicken, some Greek yogurt, or even a few slices of roll-up deli meat makes it way easier to pass on the bread basket and order something balanced once I'm out. And when I order, I don't overthink calories. I just find a meal that's heavy in protein. Extra chicken, another egg, or chicken and steak fajita combo without the tortillas goes a long way in keeping me full and satisfied without feeling like I'm on a diet. Even at a buffet, I fill my plate with meat, fruit, and other whole foods first. It sets the tone for the rest of the meal while keeping me grounded. Because here's the truth. You don't need to skip every social meal. You just need a simple strategy going in. Especially since skipping social events to stick to your diet makes it way less likely that you'll actually stick to your diet. Imagine walking into any restaurant, any party, any situation and feeling completely confident in your choices. No more anxiety about ruining your diet. No more Monday morning guilt. That's what these swaps gave me, and it's what they'll give you too. Of course, making these simple diet swaps won't do a thing for you if you don't have a solid plan to start with. You can watch this video next where I show you the exact plan I used to lose 50 pounds, which also happens to be the same plan I still follow to easily keep the weight off.